They trusted the system. They trusted the playbook. And more than anything, they trusted the man who built it. Bill Walsh didn't believe in chaos. He believed in structure, precision, timing, every step measured, every decision accounted for before the ball was even snapped. That was how dynasties were built, and for years, it worked. Across the field, sometimes across the meeting room, stood the man expected to execute that vision perfectly. Joe Montana. From the outside, they looked inseparable, the architect and his masterpiece, the mind and the arm. Commentators loved the narrative. Walsh created Montana, as if greatness could be diagrammed on a whiteboard. But inside the locker room, the truth was quieter and far more dangerous, because what made Joe Montana special was also what made him unpredictable. And unpredictability terrified Bill Walsh, not because Montana was reckless, but because he saw things the system couldn't. The tension didn't explode in public. It simmered. It lived in long pauses during film sessions, in moments where Montana would glance at a defensive alignment and hesitate, just slightly before nodding. Walsh noticed everything. He noticed when Montana didn't repeat the play call exactly as given, when he changed protections at the line without looking to the sideline, when he trusted instinct over instruction. Most coaches would kill for that confidence. Walsh feared what it could cost, because systems don't bend easily, and when they do, they break. The game that exposed everything didn't arrive with drama. No headlines, no hype, just another high-stakes matchup, late in the season, where execution mattered more than flair. The 49ers had the lead, but not control. Walsh paced the sideline, clipboard tight in his grip, eyes scanning the field with surgical focus. He had built this moment play by play, rep by rep. Montana jogged onto the field, helmet on, expression unreadable. The call came in, safe, calculated, textbook. Montana listened. Then he looked up. The defense was showing something odd. A corner creeping just a step too far inside. A safety tilted at an angle that didn't match the coverage on paper. It was subtle, invisible to most, but Montana saw it. He broke the huddle and didn't run the play exactly as designed. Nothing dramatic, just a small adjustment, a shift in timing, a route altered by a few steps. On the sideline, Walsh froze. He knew that look. The look Montana got when he trusted himself more than the script. The ball was snapped. Montana dropped back, waited an extra beat, one beat too many according to the system, and then released the pass into a window that technically didn't exist. Completion. First down. The crowd roared. Teammates clapped. Receivers jogged back to the line energized. Walsh didn't celebrate. He stared at the field, jaw tight, because that throw shouldn't have worked. It violated spacing. It broke timing. It relied on anticipation, not design. And worst of all, it succeeded. That's how the conflict began. Not with failure, with proof. The next drive followed the same pattern. Walsh sent in another conservative call. Montana executed it. Almost. Another read. Another instinctive change. Another gain that looked routine to everyone except the man holding the clipboard. Between series, Walsh pulled Montana aside. His voice was calm, controlled. "Run what I send in," he said. Not angrily, precisely. Montana nodded. "Yes, coach." But when he returned to the huddle, something in his posture told a different story. He respected Walsh. He believed in the system, but he also believed in moments, and moments didn't always wait for permission. As the game tightened, the pressure increased, not from the opponent, but from the sideline. Walsh shortened the leash. Calls became safer, margins smaller. Montana felt it. He could feel the system trying to protect the game, while the game was slipping toward chaos. Late in the fourth quarter, the score narrowed. One possession, everything on the line. Walsh sent in the call. Ultra safe, minimal risk, designed to burn clock, not win decisively. Montana repeated it in the huddle. Then he paused. He looked at his receivers, at their eyes, at their readiness. And he changed it. Not the whole play, just the ending. The defense lined up exactly how Montana expected. The snap came. Montana ignored the first read, the one the system wanted. He waited. Walsh shouted something from the sideline, realizing too late what was happening. Montana threw. The ball cut through the air, precise and unforgiving, landing exactly where instinct said it should. Touchdown. The stadium erupted. Players sprinted toward the end zone, helmets flying. Momentum secured. Walsh stood still. He didn't smile. He didn't shout, because in that moment, he understood the truth he had been resisting. The system had created the opportunity, but Joe Montana had finished it, and that meant control was no longer absolute. It meant greatness had slipped beyond the playbook. That night didn't end their partnership, but it changed it forever, because from that moment on, every time Montana stepped to the line and glanced at the defense, Walsh had to wonder, would he follow the system, or would he follow himself? If the touchdown had embarrassed the system, the days that followed unsettled it. Inside the 49ers facility, nothing looked different. Meetings ran on time. Practice drills were crisp. Film sessions followed their usual rhythm, but the air had changed. Bill Walsh was not a man who raised his voice. He didn't need to. Control, for him, came from clarity, from repetition, from eliminating uncertainty before it could breathe. And uncertainty had just breathed on national television. In the film room, Walsh replayed the touchdown slowly. He didn't comment at first. He let the tape roll, rewound it, and played it again. This, he finally said, tapping the screen, was not the call. No anger, no accusation, just a fact. Joe Montana sat forward, elbows on knees, eyes on the screen. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He already knew. Walsh continued, voice steady. The system works when everyone executes it exactly. When we improvise, we invite chaos. Montana nodded. Yes, coach. The meeting moved on, but the message lingered. From that day forward, Walsh tightened the structure. Play calls became more specific. Audibles were limited. Checkdowns emphasized. To most quarterbacks, this would have felt like safety. To Montana, it felt like distance. Not distance from the coach, but from the moment. Montana never rebelled openly. He never questioned authority. He ran the practices exactly as designed. But during games, the tension returned. It showed itself in small things. A pause before the snap. A glance at the sideline that didn't wait for permission. A receiver adjusting his route without being told. Walsh saw it all, and it unsettled him. Not because it failed, but because it worked. Every successful improvisation made the system look less complete, less necessary. That frightened Walsh more than any interception ever could. Midway through the season, the pressure intensified. The league had adjusted. Defenses were disguising coverages better. Games tightened earlier. Margins shrank. This was exactly where Walsh believed structure mattered most, and it was exactly where Montana trusted instinct. The breaking point came in a game that should have been routine, late, close, one-score difference. Walsh sent in the call, deliberate, conservative, designed to control field position. Montana broke the huddle, lined up, and saw something wrong. A linebacker cheating outside, a safety rotating late. The system said, don't risk it. Montana said, now. He changed the play. The result wasn't catastrophic. It was worse. It worked. Another conversion. Another drive alive. On the sideline, Walsh turned away from the field for the first time all season. Not in frustration, but in calculation. After the game, he called Montana into his office. No tape, no clipboard, just 2 chairs. Walsh spoke first. You're not wrong, he said carefully, but if I let this continue, I lose control of the system. Montana listened, and if you take it away, he replied quietly, you lose what makes it work in games like that. There it was. Not defiance, not rebellion, truth. Walsh leaned back. For the first time, he looked older. Not tired, but reflective. Systems were built to eliminate human error, but Montana wasn't an error. He was an exception. That night, Walsh made a decision he would never announce publicly. He didn't change the system. He changed the boundary. Montana would still run the offense, still respect the structure. But when moments tightened, when the game slipped beyond diagrams, Walsh would let go. Not fully, but enough. The next weeks proved how dangerous that compromise was, because now Montana wasn't just executing, he was choosing, and defenses felt it. They couldn't predict him anymore, not because he was chaotic, but because he was aware of leverage, aware of fear, aware of timing. Walsh watched from the sideline as Montana manipulated games in ways the system never anticipated. It was beautiful and terrifying, because the more Montana succeeded this way, the clearer one truth became: the greatest moments could not be coached. They had to be allowed. By the end of the season, the tension hadn't disappeared. It had evolved. Walsh no longer fought Montana's instincts. He prepared for them, because deep down he understood something every great architect eventually learns. At some point, the creation stops obeying the blueprint, and if you're wise enough, you don't try to stop it. You step back and watch. The test came without warning. No build-up, no dramatic framing. Just a game that tightened faster than anyone expected. Late season, high stakes, everything the system was designed for. Bill Walsh stood on the sideline with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the field. He had done everything right. The preparation was flawless. The script was clean. The calls were safe. And yet, the game refused to cooperate. The opponent adjusted early. Coverage disguised better. Pressure arrived faster. Routes closed sooner than they should have. The system was intact. Reality wasn't. Joe Montana felt it by the second drive. Not panic, recognition. The kind that comes when you realize the game is slipping into a space no diagram can fully reach. The first half ended close. Too close. In the locker room, Walsh spoke calmly. No urgency. No emotional spikes. He reinforced structure, precision.
Patience. Montana listened. He always did. But as he put his helmet back on, he knew something Walsh couldn't fully plan for. The game was about to compress. The third quarter brought chaos, a turnover, a short field, a sudden deficit. For the first time all season, the system looked reactive. Walsh adjusted, tightened protections, shortened reads, reduced risk. It was the right response, but it wasn't enough. Montana jogged onto the field late in the fourth quarter with the score against them, and time bleeding away. The call came in from the sideline. Safe, conservative, controlled. Montana repeated it in the huddle. Then he looked up. The defense was bluffing pressure, showing discipline, but hiding fear. A corner hesitating, a linebacker leaning just a fraction too early. Montana felt the moment stretch. This was it. Not rebellion, not defiance, responsibility. He glanced to the sideline. Walsh met his eyes. For the briefest second, nothing passed between them. Then Walsh did something he had never done before. Nothing. No signal, no correction, no override, just stillness. It wasn't permission spoken aloud. It was permission given by absence. Montana turned back to the line. He changed the play. Not radically, not recklessly, just enough to expose what the defense was trying to hide. The snap came. Pressure surged exactly where Montana expected. He didn't rush. He stepped into the pocket, waited half a beat longer than the system would ever allow, and released the ball into a window that only existed because the defense believed he wouldn't dare. Completion. Big gain. The sideline erupted, but Walsh didn't move. He watched silently as the drive continued. Another adjustment. Another read made on instinct. Another conversion. The system was no longer driving the offense. It was supporting it. Inside the red zone, Walsh sent in one final call. The safest option. The one that guaranteed at least points. Montana broke the huddle. He saw it again. The defense overplaying caution, expecting control, waiting for the system. Montana changed the ending. The throw came fast and clean, landing exactly where the defense had abandoned discipline for assumption. Touchdown. The stadium exploded. Players rushed the end zone. Helmets flew. Momentum sealed. Montana jogged to the sideline. Walsh stepped forward. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. In that moment, the tension that had lived between them for years resolved into something else. Understanding. Walsh hadn't lost control. He had redefined it. Because control wasn't about enforcing the system at all costs. It was about knowing when the system had done its job, and when it was time to let the player finish it. In the post-game press conference, Walsh was asked the obvious question. "Coach, did you call that final play?" He paused. "No," he said. "Joe did." The room reacted instantly. Surprise, curiosity, speculation. Walsh continued. "That's what he's there for." Montana was asked later if he'd gone against the plan. He shook his head. "I followed it," he said. "Just further." That answer summed up everything. From that night on, the relationship changed. Not publicly, but fundamentally. Walsh still designed the offense, still demanded discipline, still believed in structure. But when moments tightened beyond design, he trusted the one thing no system could replace. A quarterback who understood time, fear, and opportunity better than any diagram ever could. Joe Montana didn't defeat the system. He completed it. And Bill Walsh learned the final lesson of mastery. The greatest creations don't break the rules. They tell you when the rules have done enough. That was the night the system let go, and the night a partnership became a legacy.